Hi guys, it's me, and I am in the kitchen today and I'm doing a bunch of little projects, and I thought I would bring you along today. I am working on two projects. One is making roasted beef stock, which I have just started, and I will show you the whole process. And I'm also going to be canning some red kidney beans. And now I picked these up yesterday at our little grocery store here in town, and I will also take you through the whole process from start to finish of how I do that. So if you're interested, hang with me and we'll get started. So what I have just simply added some soup bones. I've got 5 onions and a bunch of celery. I've salted and peppered lightly everything before I threw it in here. And I'm just gonna let this roast for about another, it's been in here for about a half an hour. I'm gonna let it go for another half an hour before I add the water and other ingredients. So this is actually the first time I have made beef stock this way. I'm using a recipe. It's not even really a recipe. It's just a conglomeration of different things, ingredients. And I watched a couple of videos by The Needy Homesteader here on YouTube. If you don't know who she is, look her up. She's awesome. She is a canning queen. My favorite bread recipes come from Heather at Needy Homesteader, and also I have copied so many of her canning recipes. So I'm using one that she modeled in a video, in several videos actually. She's done several videos on beef stock. And I'll just, as we get there, I'll just take you through each piece of that process. And while this is cooking down, I'm going to go ahead and get started on my beans. So let's get going with that. So the first thing we have to do before we can beans is to sort and wash them. We have to go ahead and make sure that all of the beans that we're canning are whole beans. We don't want any shells. We don't want any sticks. We don't want any dirt. Sometimes there's an occasional pebble that sneaks its way in, and we don't want any of that. So a lot of people will sort them before they wash them. I just kind of do it all at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and just give them a good rinse. And then we're going to start sorting, rinsing, sorting until this whole colander is complete. And fortunately, I was able to tell when I bought this bag that the condition of the beans was great. Now see, there's something we don't want to go in our final product. So that shows the importance of getting rid of the weird things. These actually look pretty good. I'm not finding a ton of split beans or shells or discolored ones. So we might have a pretty short job today of the washing and sorting part of this. And if you can hear my dishwasher, I apologize, but you know what? I live here, and you just have to do what you have to do. I prefer to can my beans in pint jars because it's just the two of us at home. And I find if we have quart jars, we end up with more beans than we are needing. So these really look pretty good. I think I'm gonna call it good with this batch in the colander, and I'm going to get started on the second piece. Okay, you guys, so real life just happened and completely derailed my video. My mail deliverer guy came up the driveway, which set my dog to barking in crazy mode that he goes into. My mailman is terrified of our dog. Our dog is big and scary looking, and so whenever the mail is delivered, I have to go outside and retrieve it from the van, which I did, and it resulted in a 5-minute conversation. So by the time I got back in, my soup stock was ready for adding the water and the other ingredients. So I started to do that, and then I recorded 22 minutes of video of me finishing my stock and canning an entire load of beans without my microphone turned on. So there was no sound whatsoever. But I do want to finish up what I did with my stock. So I had roasted my soup bones, my celery, my onions, some salt and pepper, and a carrot or two for an hour at high heat at 450. Then I took 1.5 gallons of filtered water from my Berkey, added it to the stock, which I'll show you. If you don't have filtered water, don't prefer to use it, you can use your trusted water at home. It's not a big deal. I just prefer to use my Berkey water. So into my stock then, I added 3 kind of medium to large size bay leaves. I would normally add a handful of peppercorn. I don't have any peppercorn at home right now, so I just cracked a bunch of fresh cracked pepper into there until I was satisfied with it. I added about 2 tablespoons of canning salt, and the last piece of the stock was to add a splash of apple cider vinegar. And when I say splash, I mean for this amount, I think I added about 1.5 tablespoons. And that's not for flavor. That doesn't do anything to the flavor. You will not taste the apple cider vinegar in the stock. What it does is it helps to draw the marrow out of the bones, and that is definitely nutritionally advantageous to you. You do want that in your final product. So that is it. That is all I added to the pot, and I went ahead and decreased the temperature down to 250. I'm waiting for it to come up to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, I'm going to drop the temperature down, and I'm going to let this go at about 200, 225 for 48 hours. So a long time to cook down. And I will, in 48 hours, bring you along for the rest of the processing of this beautiful kettle full of roasted beef stock. So stay tuned. Okay, we are gonna go for take 2 on canning my beans. I have my microphone on this time, so hopefully I won't be recording 22 minutes of dead air. So I will show you what I've got going on here. Get you positioned. So I have my clean jars that have been washed in hot soapy water. I have the lids also cleaned in hot soapy water and resting in some hot water. I have the rings that have been washed and dried in hot soapy water. I have, of course, the beans. I've got my funnel. I have a small container of white vinegar for wiping down the rims and a piece of paper towel to use to wipe down the rims. I have my filtered water to go into the jars. And I have my little lid lifter also. Purpose is the debubbler. So that's it. Here we go. We're just going to take 1/2 cup measure of beans per jar. You might notice that I have an assortment of jars. I have wide mouth and regular. mouth, I have Ball, I have Kerr. I'm pretty sure all of these jars have been used probably multiple times. And I'm okay with doing that on a product that isn't as dear. Like, you know, beans are cheap. So if I have a jar that fails, I'm not out a ton of money, but I probably would not use jars that I know have been used numerous times on something that is more costly, like meat, for instance. So then I'm just going to go ahead and fill these jars with water. And we're bringing that water level up to the 1-inch headspace. I am not adding any salt. And the reason for that is that I season the heck out of my food when I make it. So I don't want to start with an overly salty product and then add more salt to the final product, whatever it ends up being. These, I'm certain, will probably go into chili. All right, I'm gonna just go ahead and use my debubbler to just give these a quick stir. We don't want any extra air pockets in here before we put the lids on. And I'm noticing I have a couple of floaters coming to the top, and I'm going to remove anything that floats to the top because that means it's a bad bean, and we don't want those in our finished product. This one has quite a number of them, which is surprising because these were really, overall, really nice beans. Okay, that one looks good. Next, I see one more. Gotta snag that guy out of there. Then with this batch, I'm gonna go ahead and use my vinegar and wipe carefully around the edges. Now, obviously, there's nothing here that I'm canning up that has anything greasy or fatty or salty where I'm worried about something like that being on my rim. But it's still just good practice to do that each time. So to know how tight, finger tight looks, this is a trick that I learned from Heather on The Needy Homesteader. You get your can, you get your lid on, and you've got your band. With your hand, you're going to just relax your hand. Make sure that there's no tension in your wrist whatsoever. You get your lid on, and then still with that very, very soft hand, no tension in your wrist, you just turn until it stops. Okay? You don't press any harder than that. And that is how you go to finger tight. So I'm going to put this batch into my canner. Now notice I have room temperature water on room temperature beans. My canner water is room temperature. So everything is the same temperature. I'm going to go ahead and load my canner. I have probably enough for at least one row and probably almost another whole second row. And then I will process them, and I'll show you the completed part after they're done processing. Okay, so our processing time is done. My pressure gauge came all the way back down to 0, and I took my cap off, and I have let this sit. It's been about 20 minutes or so now, and I think we are ready to, oh, I had vented this just a little bit. I vented the lid just a little bit to kind of let out some of that hot, steamy air. And, oh, did you hear that? Little snaps. That means my lids are snapping, which means I have a good seal on my jars. So I vented this just to kind of equal out the temperature from the very, very hot and steamy in the canner to the room temperature out here. But we're ready to go ahead and take this lid off and pull out some of these completed jars. So just give me 1 second while I use both hands to take the lid off. Okay, here we go. It's very exciting. I bring them out very slowly because I don't want them to get jostled too much because that seal is still setting. Also the temperature change. I just want to be very careful not to crack any jars. And these are getting set out on click. I love that sound. These are getting set out on a little canning mat that I sewed. And my friends have been getting these as I sew them up. Look at that. So, we have a successful canning day here in the kitchen. All right, I'm gonna just keep on keeping on. And I hope you have enjoyed coming with me on my canning journey today. Welcome back to my kitchen. And as life would happen, something has come up. And my intention to cook my beef stock for 48 hours is out the door because life happens. So we have been going for 28 hours at this point, and I just need to go ahead and get the stock ladled into jars and into the pressure canner. And I need to get this job finished up because tomorrow we have something that we need to have our full attention on. So I'm going to take you over to the pot so you can see what the stock looks like. Okay, that looks beautiful. Everything looks very, very well cooked down. There is a layer of fat on the top, and that is not going to be a problem. I have a method to take care of that before it gets into the jars. So what I need to do now is get this guy over to here where my canning station is, and I will be right back and I will show you what's next. Over here I have my little blue tea kettle, which is, I'm just boiling water in it right now. And I'm going to add that boiling water to my freshly washed and hot soapy water and rinsed jars. The hot water is going to keep my jars hot. I have my pressure canner ready to go. It is on high heat, so the water inside it is going to be hot. And then we're going to, of course, ladle our hot stock into our hot jars. And I've also got water in my pot to add to my freshly washed lids to keep them hot. So anytime, of course, you are canning things that any part of it is hot, the whole thing has to be hot. You'll remember my beans from yesterday, everything was room temperature. So the water in the canner was room temperature, the water in the jars was room temperature. Again, not a how-to canning video, but just some fundamentals to keep you on the right track. Okay, so I mentioned I had a way to combat that fat from going into our jars, and that is this gizmo. I learned about it from the Needy Homesteader. And what it is it is a fat separator. So you pour your stock into here, it siphons down into here, and then you release the stock out of here. So while it's in this container, the fat is rising to the top, and your clean, clear stock is coming out of the bottom. So we're gonna go ahead and give this a try. It's my first try with using this. I do have some cheesecloth. I have several thicknesses of 100 grade cheesecloth going over the top. That will also help to collect the fat and help congeal the fat. Just another way to prevent that fat from getting into our jars. So I'm gonna go ahead and empty one of my first hot jars. I am saving the water for cleanup, so I'm just emptying it into my sink, and I'll use that hot water at the end of this whole process. Hot, hot, hot. All right, so I'm gonna first ladle some of this broth into the fat separator. This cheesecloth is doing a good job of collecting all the other little bits of vegetable scrap and peppercorn and different pieces of stuff that we don't want going into our final product. But you can see the cheesecloth has collected some, and it's hard to see, but there is a fat layer starting right here. I'm just going to give this a second to separate out before I empty this broth or stock into my jar. Wow, that is some rich looking broth. I think I need just a smidge more. There. And then, like yesterday, I have my little paper towel. I have my little vinegar, and we're gonna do a really meticulous job of cleaning the rims on these jars because they do have lots of potential fat and salt that could interfere with the seal on my lids. And as I fill each jar, I'm gonna go ahead and take it over to the canner. And just, I wanna do that just to keep things hot. So my broth looks beautiful. It also looks like it's atomic grade. It looks so dark and so concentrated that when I do this again next time, I'm gonna probably add about 2 to 3 times as much water as I did, because this stuff is gonna be rich. Doesn't mean it won't be good, but it's gonna be rich. So I hope you enjoyed watching the process. I will bring you along when I do more stuff. And we'll see you next time. God bless.